Okay, so good morning everyone. Welcome to the second bootcamp session hosted by Quicksilken. We call this as the beta bootcamp, and in this particular bootcamp, we'll be covering the APB protocol. So the APB protocol, the basically the format of this particular bootcamp will be same as the previous one. We will first go through the basics, and in this basics, we'll cover that what is an APB protocol, where is it used, what kind of different signals does it contain, and what are the different timing relationships between those different signals. We'll spend less than 10 minutes here and straight away jump into the RTL implementation, because once we start implementing the RTL, a lot of things will start becoming clearer and you will gain more understanding about the different timing requirements and how the particular protocol works. So we'll spend majority of our time writing the RTL and the test bench as well to verify the given problem statement. I'll explain what is the problem statement for this particular API protocol during the basics itself. And then finally, we will look into the waveform as well to, you know, uh, to basically judge whether our RTL is behaving correctly, and whatever we had discussed about the protocol, we can actually see in the implemented RTL and the test bench too. So uh, So first thing that feel free to interrupt me at any time. If you feel that I'm going very fast or very slow, let me know. And if you have any questions which doesn't make any sense to you, that also please do let me know. And any doubts anywhere, feel free to just unmute yourself and start asking. So this, I want this to be a learning experience for you guys, and not where I just keep on telling you something and you guys don't understand. So please feel free to interrupt me, right? So okay, so let's straight away jump into the basics of APB protocol. So ignore this diagram for now. The APB protocol, it's a very simple protocol, and it is a non-pipelined protocol where you have certain set of signals. Those certain set of signals are actually used for initiating a transaction from your master towards your slave, and it also implements a small ready mechanism where your slave can indicate that it is now ready to accept a particular transaction. Uh, it is a non-pipeline transaction, which means that if once the transaction starts, it will remain stable and will only get completed once the slave has accepted the particular transaction. So we'll discuss how the slave accepts that, but yeah, so in terms of what I mean to say here is that once the particular transaction starts, it will only get completed once the slave is ready to accept it. And whenever the master initiates a particular transaction, it needs to keep entire thing stable. So whatever the different control and data signals which are related to that particular transaction, those cannot change until or unless the slave has accepted the transaction. So that is what is meant by the non-pipeline feature. And if you talk about the current design where it is used, so it is still used in a lot of common SoCs and as well as processors and different networking chips too. They implement the APB protocol whenever they want to send some sort of data from one master to the other slave, or whenever basically they want to communicate between a master and slave. And that communication is as simple as either reading some data out from the slave or writing some data. Because if you have such simple requirements, then what you can do is you can implement a simple APB protocol which will take very less area and which will also be fast and will burn less power also. So you don't have to go for your complicated AXI based protocols in these scenarios. And it has now become a standard that your entire debug related components which you have in your SOCs, those generally use the APB protocol, and they have the entire chain built up such that your computer which needs to debug a particular board sends the data over the JTAG interface, which gets converted into an APB, and then it goes into the SOC where the entire debug information is performed. The reason why your APB the reason why your debug related stuff uses an APB protocol is because during debug what you need to do is you need to either read the value of certain registers or implement a breakpoint or a watch point stuff. So since what you're basically doing is either you are reading or writing, it can be easily achieved via an APP protocol. Second thing, in most of the SOCs you would have, or you might know that they implement a lot of peripherals. So those peripherals can be either your peripheral for your UART, which is then connected to your keyboard, or your timer related registers or timer related peripheral. Then you can even have your uh, other peripherals like your basically I2C chip, GPIOs, other stuff like that. So these are the common peripherals which are used in the SOCs, and all of these peripherals, they need to be programmed, and then what you need to, once they are programmed, they will start producing some output data. So what you do in order to program these peripherals is that you use the APP protocol to program their control registers, and when they signal something has happened within the device, you will go ahead and read that particular device to get the data out of that. So that is again controlled via the APP protocol. So that is where in the current designs your protocol is used. So it is fairly important that you understand this design well, and you know how this particular design works. So I'll first go and list down what are the different signals which we need in which are commonly needed in our APP protocol. So the first signal is your peak clock, which is basically the clock which is given to your protocol, or the clock on which the protocol works. Then you have your P reset signal. This can be either a rising edge or a active low signal. So usually it is an active low reset for APP protocol, which means that you are in reset when the signal is 0 and you are out of reset when this becomes 1. Then you have certain APP related signals. So the first signal which I'll talk about is the P cell signal. So this is the select signal, and this signal basically selects which particular peripheral or which particular slave this transaction is meant to be. So that is why this signal is basically replicated n number of times, where n is your number of slaves implemented. So this would be n minus 1 down to 0, and each slave will get its own copy. So for example, let's assume that you have slave 0, so that will be connected to P cell 0, and similarly your slave n would be connected to P cell n. So this is a signal which basically selects your um, selects the slave for which this particular transaction is meant to be. So let's assume that the signal goes high on this particular cycle, and the slave will now get activated, that the transaction is given to me and I need to respond to it. So the other signal which it sends is the enable signal. So this enable signal is always asserted one cycle after your select signal. And the reason why it takes one cycle is because in most of the scenarios, your SOCs implement clock gating. So what will happen is that your particular device, if it is not active, it will be in a low power mode. So that is why the protocol actually sends a select and an enable signal. So the select signal will wake up your device, and on the next cycle it will see that okay, P enable has come, P select was also for me, this particular transaction is meant to be, so I'll do what is needed in order to complete this particular transaction, right? So the P enable is nothing but it is basically an enable signal which tells you that this transaction is ongoing. uh, the next signal which it consists is a P write signal. So this is a fairly simple signal. If it is 1, then you are writing to your slave. If it is 0, then you are reading from your slave, and it can either be 1 or 0 depending upon whatever your master wants to do. So let's assume that it is 1 here. Then there are certain data related signals. So first one is your write data, and similarly you have your read data. So your write data is basically the data which your master wants to write. So since this is a write transaction, it would give certain value to your data at this point. Let's say it is 0xcd, and your read data would be the data which is read from the slave. So since it is a write, we don't have to care about it, but yeah, we'll see how this read data works. And then there are certain slave related signals. So those signals are basically your p ready and p slave error. Okay, there are certain more signals which I have omitted. For example, your pprot signal, your p-strobe signals. So since we are focusing on basics here, we'll keep limited to these set of signals only for this particular bootcamp. So yeah, so you, as I mentioned about p-ready signal, so this is the ready signal which indicates that your particular slave is now ready to accept the transaction, and the transaction can be marked as completed. So let's assume that your slave is always ready, so it keeps your ready high throughout. So whatever read or write transaction comes, your slave doesn't care about it. It will service it as soon as it comes, and that is why it assumes that your ready is always high. The slave error signal is one of those signals which basically tells that your transaction could not be processed by the slave, and it raised an error signal saying that something went wrong and you should probably reinitiate your transaction or correct it and then again send it out. So this can actually happen when your security requirements aren't matched. For example, you are sending a non-secure transaction to a secure slave, or basically you are sending a secure transaction to a non-secure slave, so it will raise a p-slave error in that case, and the transaction would be marked as completed but completed with an error. So these are the general signals. Now let's talk about what happens when your both p-sell and p-enable are held high. So like I mentioned that it is a non-pipeline protocol, and once the transaction starts, the both your data and control signals need to remain stable. So let's assume that you do not get a p ready, and since you are not getting a p ready, you would keep your p sell, p enable, p write data, and p read data stable. So once all of these signals are stable, what it means is that whenever you are in this particular phase, that is, you have your p sell asserted along with p enable asserted, at that particular time, all your other control signals should have reached to a stable value. That is, your p write should have reached to a value which you want to send for this particular transaction, as well as your p write data should have reached to that particular transaction. And I missed one signal, which is your p adder signal. So let's add it here. So you have your p address signal also, which tells to which particular address you want to write this request to. So it can also be, let's say, F000. Okay, so we were here, right? So we got a p sell, we got a p enable, and at that particular point, your p write, p address, p write data should remain stable, and they need to remain stable until your slave asserts the ready signal. So let's assume that the slave asserts the ready signal somewhere here. So this particular transaction will continue to remain as is until it gets a ready signal. So this is one of the protocol requirements, that your transaction once started can only get completed once a p ready is seen. And there are certain requirements on the slave side as well, that whenever it raises a ready, at that instance only your slave error can actually come. So your slave error basically would be sampled by your master when it sees a ready. So it might happen that the slave had raised slave error here, but it went low here. So the what value of slave error your master sees is basically this value, which will be 0 here. So if there is anything which your slave wants to communicate, that needs to happen as soon as your p ready gets asserted, and it keeps your so your master keeps your select, enable, write, and address related signals as stable until or unless you get a p ready. So any questions here? Any doubts? Okay, so this is how your the particular protocol works. And if you read the spec of the protocol, it actually mentions three different states in which the particular protocol can be. So let's discuss those states real quickly here before we jump into the RTL implementation. So the first state which your spec mentions is the idle state. So let's call this as idle. The second one is the setup state. And finally, the third one is your access state. So these different states are basically the scenarios in which your particular protocol or the particular transaction can be. So the idle state is the state where nothing is active. That is, you remain in idle whenever you do not have any transaction to be given out, and both your P cell is equal to 0, your P enable is equal to 0. So at that scenario, your state machine is in the idle state, which means that you are not performing any reads or any writes, and you're not even initiating any transaction. You move to the setup state when you want to initiate a particular transaction. So you will move from idle to setup whenever you have certain transaction to be given out. And once you are in the setup state, your signals would basically be that your P cell is equal to 1 and your P enable is equal to 0. So it is basically this scenario where your P select was 1 but your P enable is equal to 0. So this is the setup phase. The spec mentions that your particular protocol can be in the setup state only for one cycle, which means that as soon as your P cell goes high, on the next cycle you have to assert your P enable. If you do not do that, you will run into protocol violations. So this implies that as soon as you enter the setup state, you are sure that you will move on to the access state. And once you're in the access state, your P cell would be equal to 1. Your P enable would be equal to 1. Now you will remain in the access state until you get a P ready. Right? So your P ready, if it is not there, you will remain in the access state. And when you are in the access state, your P write data and your P address, those will remain stable. So you cannot change that because that is what the requirement of your protocol is. And if you change anything while your P enable P cell were 1 and your P ready was 0, then you would basically your P write data, P address, if you change that, then you will run into protocol violations. So this is how a particular transaction starts. Now what happens if you get a P ready? So once you get a P ready, you can either go back to your idle state or you can go back to your setup state as well. So both are allowed. So if you go back to your idle state, then that means you do not have any transaction to be given out, which means your P ready was 1 and no new transaction. And you will move on to your setup state if you wanted to initiate another transaction to your slave, which means that your P cell would continue to remain 1, but you will get a strobe on your P enable signal. So what basically happened is that, let's assume this is your P cell, this is your P enable, and let's assume we got a P ready somewhere here. So if you move back to your setup state, then your P enable signal would change somewhat like this. So this would mean that you are initiating back-to-back transaction to your same slave. So which means your P select would continue to remain high, and your P enable will transition to something like this. So this would mark your state as setup, and you will again go back to the access state. So that's how your particular protocol works. Any questions or anything which isn't clear, feel free to ask. Okay, so Let me clear off this. Let's quickly look into the waveforms which I have here as well.
Sir, one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is metastability occurring in these cases?
Sorry, your voice is breaking. What is it?
Metastability also comes in picture, right? So for rising edge and
Mhm.
at that time, how that will be recovered?
So why does metastability has to come if your clocks are synchronous? Let's say you're both master and slave are working on the same clock. Then would you be concerned about metastability?
Yes, synchronizers are used previously.
If synchronizers are used, then it's fine. But so in general, what happens is that your most of the cases your clocks are synchronous. So if your clocks are synchronous, then you are not worried about metastability at all, right? So it will only happen when you want to move from one clock domain to other clock domain. And if that is the case, then you are right. You would need synchronizers which move from one clock domain to the other.
In SOC, we will be having two or more clock domains, right?
Yeah,
In
it
that
depends.
case,
Yeah, in that case, you would need all your P cell P enable signals to go through synchronizers, and then only it will be used in the other domain.
okay.
Yeah.
Hi, when we talk about protocol violations, what kind of violations are you referring to?
Yeah, I'll cover that as well. Yeah. So I'll cover those when we are discussing this waveform here. In this particular waveform, what we see is that we get a P cell. On the next cycle, we get a P enable. And as soon as we got your P enable, your address was fixed to a particular value. Here it is cafe. Your write signal was also fixed to a particular value, which is 1. And your write data was also fixed to a particular value, which is 0. Now if you notice here, your ready signal is all 1, which means your transaction would get completed as soon as this happens, that you entered. So this is your basically setup phase. This is your access phase, and you move back to idle phase here because you got a P ready and your P cell went 0. So this is how the transaction, this is how your state machines would be transitioning. So this would be your setup, this is access, and then you're back to idle, and here we were in idle state. Okay, so this is straightforward. Now let's discuss the violation case here. So let's assume that you have your particular transaction ongoing, that is you got a P select, so which means you entered your setup state here. On the next cycle, your P enable goes high, which means you entered your access phase. But as you notice that your address got changed here while you were in the access phase. The protocol mandates that once you enter your access phase, you're not allowed to change your address or your write data or your P write signal. But here we see that it is happening. So in that case, let's say what happens here, if your slave instead of asserting ready on this cycle, if it would have asserted ready here, then it would have taken this particular transaction to this dead address, which would have meant that the data which the slave would return would correspond to this address, whereas your master wanted the data for this particular address. So since your master was not able to assert your data or your address on the right cycle, that is on cycle 6, your data should have got changed, but it got changed one cycle later, which is a protocol violation. So the entire system behaved incorrectly. That is, your slave saw the incorrect address, it returned the incorrect data, and then whatever incorrect data has been returned, it will go back and change. It will cause issues. So this is a case where your protocol violations can actually lead to functional problems also. Does that make sense, Shika?
Yes. Understood. Thank you.
So this is a very common problem which we actually see happening in most of the SoCs or CPUs as well, that if your data or your P write signal changes, your slave starts behaving in a very awkward fashion. So uh, so that is where your protocol violations can lead to incorrect functional issues as well. So it can also lead to deadlocks if your P cell or P enable signals do not honor this particular timing relationship. So your slave might be written in such a way that once it sees P cell, it expects P enable to be there. But if P enable for some reason doesn't come out on the same cycle, then it may lock up your slave, saying that it never saw a P enable after P cell. So all these scenarios can actually happen, and they have actually indeed happened during verification. So uh, these are these are the cases where your protocol violations can lead to functional or timing issues as well. Okay, so I think with this we have covered enough about the timing relationships and what all different signals we have. Let's try to implement a simple RTL for APB and as well as a test bench. So I'll explain what we'll try to do in this particular RTL. So what we'll do is we will implement an adder using APB protocol. So our RTL would actually be the APB master, and our test bench would be the APB slave. Then what happens is that your RTL would consist of one signal. Let's call it as add underscore I, which is a 2-bit signal, and it is defined as whenever it is all zeros, then there is no operation to be performed. When it is 0 1, then what you need to do is you would perform a read operation, and when it is 1 1, you would perform a write operation. And when it is 1 0, again this is not a valid scenario, so you will not do anything. And so this is for the RTL, that whenever your test bench asserts your add underscore I signal as 0 1, it will assert a read request, and whenever your test bench asserts a write your add underscore I as 1 1, it is a write request. Other than that, what will happen is that we will just send all the requests to one particular address. Let's call it as A followed by 3 zeros. In this particular address, your test bench will program certain value. Let's say that it programs a value of 67, right? So what now your test bench can do is that it can first issue a read request. How will it do that? By asserting your add underscore I to a value of 0 1. So whenever your RTL sees that okay, add underscore I is 0 1, I need to initiate a read request, it will send a read request to this particular address using the APB protocol. And once it sees that, your slave would return the value which was stored, which is 67. So your RTL will get the value of 67. Then your slave or the test bench will initiate a write request. So that would mean that your adder underscore I is equal to 1 1. Sorry, add underscore I is equal to 1 1. So once that happens, then your RTL or your APB master would initiate a write request, and the value which is written to that particular address, which is A00 we write data, will be equal to 68. So in that way we will be actually implementing an adder using an APB protocol. Does that make sense? Any doubts about what we are trying to do? Okay, cool. So this is how you will implement an adder using an API protocol. Actually, this is a very common scenario, not the adder implementation, but the entire read-write stuff which I mentioned. So in most of the peripherals, what happens is that your when you are programming your peripherals in the SoC, you send a read request to a particular control register. The data which is returned by the slave, you analyze it, that what all different bits were set or in what configuration your particular device is. Depending upon that, you will change that certain data in order to change the state or the configuration of your slave, and then send back the write request on the same particular address. So that's a common scenario in which your APB master works. That it reads the configuration register, performs some manipulations, and writes back the data back to that configuration register. So we are trying to do somewhat on the similar lines, but instead of using configuration registers and all that, we are trying to implement an adder. So that's what the problem statement is. Let me bring out the coding section. Okay. One second. Okay, so this is where we will implement our APB RTL, and this will be our APB slave. And as we discussed, we'll be implementing an adder using an APB protocol. Okay. So let's first define the module with all the interface segments. Let's call it as APB adder add master. Okay. So this is something which I also haven't coded. So please help me if you feel that anything is wrong or anything doesn't make sense. So I'm also writing it for the first time. So input logic, we have our P clock. P reset underscore n, which is basically an active low reset. And then we have the add underscore I signal, which is basically if it is 2 tick B00, no operation, 2 tick B01, then read, 2 tick B11, then write. And then we will have all the APB related signal, which is P cell, P enable, your P address, P write. Oh, these would be output, right? P write data, which is again a 32-bit value. And then we will have P read data, which will be an input, and as well as our P ready signal from slave. So let's assume that there are no slave errors and stuff like that, because it will then take a lot of time to implement this. So we have all the different interface signals defined. The clock, reset, your add underscore I, which decides whether we want to do a read or a write, and then all the different APB related signals, which is P cell, P enable, P address, P write data, and the inputs as P read data and P ready. Okay. So first thing which we will do is that we will implement our APB master state machine, because that is the most straightforward thing to do, and I'm sure that we will be needing that. So let's first implement it, and then we will see that how we can uh, uh, assert our P cell, P enable, and different signals. So we know that it will consist of 3 states. So let's define the enum for that. Type def enum logic 1 down to 0. These states would be your idle state, your setup state, and your access state. And let's call this as APB state underscore T. So with the enum defined, let's declare the state related signals too. The current state is state underscore Q. So this is your current state. And let's have a similar signal, which is your next state. And let's add the flops first. Always underscore ff at the rate posage clock, or posage, it will be negage now, p reset underscore n. If we are not in reset, or basically if we are in reset here, then your state should go back to idle. Otherwise, we should transition to the next state. Okay. So this completes the set of flops we needed for the state machine which we'll be implementing. So let's implement the state machine as well. So we'll be implementing the state machine using the always comp block, and we will use the case statement for the current state. The different states are idle, setup, and access. And let's add a default case as well. Okay. For default, our next state will always be idle. Okay, now we'll see how we will transition, but first it is very easy to transition from setup to access, because the APB protocol mandates that whenever you're in the setup state, on the next cycle you should move on to the access state. So we can simply do next state is equal to st underscore access. So this is always true, and this is a very straightforward case. So let's handle that first. So for transitioning from idle to setup, when will that happen? So that will happen when we see this input add underscore I, and whenever the bit 0 of this particular input is not equal to 0, then we will transition. Why? Because if it was to tick be 0 1, then we were giving out a read request, and if it was to tick be 1 1, then we were giving out write request, which means that if your LSB bit is set, then we need to move from idle state to the setup state. So this is also helpful. So we'll do if add underscore I bit 0. If it is set, then our next state would be st underscore setup, and if it is not, then we should continue to remain in the idle state. Okay, so this is how we will transition from idle to setup, and setup to access is anyway straightforward. Then what happens when we enter into the access state? So in the access state, what we need to do is we need to remain in the access state until or unless we get a P ready. And if we get a P ready, let's assume that we will always go back to the idle state. So we do not want to support back-to-back transactions. So we will always go back to the idle state and then once again wait for the next transaction input, which is basically your add underscore I. So this is again straightforward. We will have if we get a p ready underscore I, then our next state is idle, and if we did not get, then our next state is access, which means that we'll remain in the access state until the p ready is seen. Cool. So this completes the state machine. Right, so this completes the state machine, right? So now with this, we need to actually implement or basically drive our P cell P enable signals. So that is again straightforward. We know that our P cell signal would be asserted as soon as we enter the setup state, which means your P cell would be equal to the current state is setup. Now this will be problematic because the setup state would only be valid for one cycle, because as soon as we entered the setup state, on the next cycle we will be entering the access state. But your P cell needs to remain high either when we are in setup or access. So which means that we need to OR it with state underscore Q equal to access. So this would mean that your P cell goes high as soon as we enter the setup state, and it will remain high until we are in the access state. We can use the similar logic for our P enable signal. This would be asserted whenever we are in the access state. And this will also satisfy the criteria that your P enable should be asserted one cycle later, because your P cell would get asserted when we enter the setup state, and on the next cycle we are sure that we will be entering the access state, which means your P cell would come one cycle before the P enable. That will happen always. So with this line of code, we have actually implemented the protocol. So basically, whatever the protocol mandated, that our P cell and P enable timing relationship should be honored, which we are actually honoring using this set of logic. So before I move ahead, let's first compile this. Okay, so let's compile this and see that whether this thing is working or not before we add additional logic. Okay, so no errors until now. Right, so this completes how we will drive our P cell and P enable signal. There's one small optimization, not optimization, just to help out with coding. What I'll do is I'll create two more signals, which are basically your state, which basically gives in which particular state your APP state machine is in. So let's assume that there's a signal called APP state underscore access, which means your current state is equal to access. And similarly, we'll have APP state setup, which is your current state is equal to setup. So this would actually help us reduce this coding, right? So we can simply do APP state setup OR with APP state access, and similarly we will have APP state access. And let's define the signal as well. Logic APP state setup, APP state access. Okay. Now we have the P cell and P enable ready. Let's get the P address driven. So address is fairly straightforward because we are certain that we will always be sending it to one particular address. So we can simply do your P adder underscore O would be equal to 32 tick H A followed by 4 zeros or 3 zeros. So since your address will not change, we can always keep it to this particular value, and it will not be violating any protocol rules, because your protocol only mentions that your address needs to stay stable whenever we are in the access state, but we are keeping it stable throughout. However, in some of the cases, it is not recommended to keep it stable even if your address does not change, due to certain security related concerns. So, because what could happen is that, let's say we implemented the security related stuff also, which is the pprot bit, and if you were sending a transaction to a non-secure stuff, and if this particular address corresponded to the secure address, this could be a violation and can actually lead to security leaks. So what usually people do is that they make it 0 whenever we are not in the access state, and they keep it to this particular value whenever we are in the access state. So in order to add that functionality, what we can do is we can simply do app state access, and we can just add it. The reason why we choose access is because at that particular point, whenever your state enters the access state, your address needs to stay stable. So that's what we are doing it here. So this means that whenever our app state machine is not in the access state, our address would be 0. Otherwise, it will be equal to this value. Okay, so address was straightforward. Next thing is your APB PWrite control signal. So when should we assert our PWrite and when should we assert our PWrite data, and what should the PWrite data contain? Okay, these are slightly tricky, because what will happen is your adder I would come for a one cycle. It will say that, okay, perform a read, and if you want to perform a read, then you need to know that what was the value of this adder I when your state machine transitioned from idle to setup, because we cannot guarantee that our particular test bench will keep the value stable. So if it keeps the value as stable, then yeah, we will run into difficulties uh, of differentiating whether this particular value was for the previous transaction or this particular value was for the current transaction. That is why what test bench will do is that it will assert this add I signal for one cycle, which will initiate the transaction. This means that we need to capture the bit 1 of this in order to drive our PWrite signal when we are in the idle state. So what we will do here is we know that we are initiating a transaction here, and now we need to differentiate what that particular transaction is. So that differentiation can be done using a next PWrite related signal, and if so this particular signal would give the value of bit 1. Why? Because so if your bit 1 is 0, that implies it is a read request, and if your bit 1 is 1, then we are giving out a write request, which means that we can assign the next PWrite signal directly to the input which we see when we are in the idle state. And now we will need to flop it, so let's add the flops for that. Always underscore ff @posit clock or negedge reset. If we are in reset, then your PWrite underscore q would be equal to 1 tick be 0. Otherwise, it will be equal to the next PWrite value. And there is still a problem, because we are just driving this PWrite signal when we are in the idle state, and that too when we get a add I 0th bit asserted. So for the other cases, we need to give some value to that. So let's assume that it always stays to the previous value whenever it is not in the idle state. So your next PWrite would be your PWrite underscore q. Now doing so, we also are not we are not running into protocol violations, because we will only change our PWrite whenever we are in the idle state. Otherwise, it will remain stable. So that is your whenever we are in the access state, our p-write signal will not change, and since it will not change, we will not run into protocol violations. So that also solves the technique. And finally, we can assign our output here. Assign p-write underscore o is equal to p-write underscore q. Next p-write and p-write underscore q. Let's compile. Okay, no errors, no warnings. So far, so good. Now your p-write data is again a challenge, because what we are trying to do is we are trying to implement an adder. And how this particular adder works is that we read a value from the slave at address 0xA00, increment that value and send that value back during the write operation. So which means that we will need to store the value which is given by the slave whenever we got a read request, and use that stored value, increment it by 1, and then send it back on the p-write data signal. Also, we need to ensure that we do not change our p-write data whenever we are in the access phase, because then we will again run into protocol violations. So that needs to remain stable whenever we are in the access state, and we can only change it either when you are in the idle or setup state. So this is slightly tricky. How can we implement this is we will need some sort of flops for sure, and we also need to tap the read value. So first let's tap the read value from your slave. So what happens that whenever you get a p ready, at this point we should check what is the value of p-write signal which we are giving out. And if it was 1, then it was a write transaction, so we should not tap the read data signal. But if it was equal to 0, then whatever value is present on the read data, we should tap that value. So let's call it as next read data, which will be equal to p read data underscore I. Yeah, and this will become your next read data, which you got whenever you were issuing a read transaction and you got a p ready, because at that point only your slave will give certain value on the read data channel. So we'll store that particular value, and we need to store it in a flop. So let's add the flop first. If we are not in reset, then this value, that is your read data underscore q, should be driven to 32 tick h 0. Otherwise, this should be equal to whatever your next read data was. Any questions? Feel free to interrupt me if anything doesn't make sense, or if you feel that there is a better way to do it. And our next read data was driven using this logic. And again, we need to ensure that it remains to its previous value. whenever we were not in the access phase and all this was not happening. So this will also ensure that we do not get unintended latches whenever this is synthesized. The next thing which I talked about was that your read data is currently being always flopped, which is correct. So we need to store the value always, and it will always be equal to the previous value, or it will equal to the new value which is given whenever we were doing a read transaction. So which feels correct, it should be okay. Now we have the read value, and we should drive the value which is stored in this flop whenever we are giving out a write transaction. So this would mean that basically you can do a assign statement here, which says your APB write data is basically equal to our data underscore q, and similarly we can block the write data when we are not in the access state, so we can do the exact same thing here. Right, so this would mean that we will be taking the flopped value whenever we are in the access phase. And we can also add one more check that we should only give out when we are actually doing a write, but I think it should be okay that even if we are doing a read, we can give out the value which is stored in the flop. That should not matter. So with this, we have completed pwrite, pwrite data, paddress, psell, penable. What is remaining? So this is done. Read data we have already captured here, so that is also done. And pready we are capturing it during this phase, so which is fine. So I think this completes the implementation for the APB master RTL. So any questions, guys? Anything which isn't clear, anything which doesn't make sense before we start looking into the test bench? Okay.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sir, can you explain it once? I didn't get that.
The entire RTL?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do that quickly. Okay, so basically our goal here is to drive all of these output signals, which are your APB related output signals. And how we are driving is by waiting for this add underscore I input, which is given from the test bench or any other component. How this signal is decoded as that if it is all zeros, then we are not performing any operation. If bit 0 of this signal is 1, then we need to perform certain operation, which could either be a read or a write, and that is dependent upon bit 1 of this particular signal. So if bit 1 is 0, then we perform a read transaction, and if bit 1 is 1, we perform a write transaction. And using this control signal, we actually want to implement an adder. And how that particular adder works is that we will first, what their component will do is it will first perform a read. So whenever the read goes out, it will return you with some read data. So that read data is the initial value of your adder. And whenever the next write comes, you will have to add 1 to that read data and send back that particular data on the pwrite data signal, and it goes back to the same slave. So that is what the intention is. Now, since we need to drive all of these signals and we know that it is an APB protocol, we first implemented the standard APB protocol state machine, which consists of your idle, setup and access state. So if you take a look at that, what happens when we are in the idle state is that we wait for your add I signal bit 0 to become 1, because if it is 0, then we will continue to remain in the idle state because there is no operation which needs to be performed. If it is 1, then what we do is we move on to the setup state, and we also capture whether we wanted to do a write or a read, which is basically your bit 1 of this particular input. Now once you enter the setup state, you do not need to perform any operations here. You just move on to the access state. So you just come to your setup state for one cycle and then move on to the access state on the next cycle. The reason why we do that is because we need to assign our P-cell and P-enable signals accordingly. The APB protocol mandates that your P-enable signal should come one cycle after the P-cell signal. That is why we have this setup state in place. Now once you are in the access state, you wait for your P-ready signal. If you do not get a P-ready signal, you continue to remain in the access state, and all your control and data signals also remain stable. So that is why we have this logic here, that your P-write and P-read data, they continue to remain stable. Then right, so this is how your state machine is implemented. We will move from the access state back to the idle state whenever we get a P-ready. So whenever we get a P-ready, then our next state is always idle state, which is C here. And then we have additional logic to capture the read data. So whenever your P-write is 0, we capture the read data and store it in the next read data flop, which is implemented right here, so that we do not miss the read value which was returned, and we will make use of this read value when we are doing our write transaction. So I'll explain that real quickly. So these are the two signals which tells us in which state we are currently. So this signal is 1 whenever we are in the access state, and this signal is 1 whenever we are in the setup state. The reason why we have these two signals is just to help us while we are driving our P-cell, P-enable and P-address signal. So as you see that our P-cell signal is driven using an OR operation of setup with access, because we know that our P cell signal should be asserted whenever we are in the setup state, and it should remain asserted until we leave the access state. That is why you see an OR here. For P-enable, it needs to remain asserted as long as we are in the access state. So that is why it is directly driven to the APB state access signal. Next was your address signal. So for address, I told that we could simply keep it as a constant value, which is A0000. But in some of the implementations, it is recommended that whenever you do not have any transaction ongoing, that is whenever you are not in the access state, your address should be 0. So that is why what we are doing is we are ANDing this particular constant value with 32-bit extended signal APB state access. So this signal would be 1 whenever we are in the access state, and whenever we are in the access state, our address would be driven to this value. We will see that in the waveforms soon. For write signal, we had actually already captured the information here. So we got the P-write signal here. We flop it such that even if your test bench changes that value, we continue to see the value which we got when we were in the idle state. So we flop that particular value, store it in this signal, and this signal is basically the P-write O which needs to be given out with your transaction. So we could again add this set of ANDs here, but it doesn't matter because we are not giving any sensitive information on the write signal. Whether it is a write or read, it will not matter from security point of view. But for address and as well as data, it is usually recommended to make them go to 0 whenever you are not in the access phase. So similarly for write data, what we do is we capture the read data which was returned whenever we were in the read transaction. How we know that we are in the read transaction is that we first check if we are in the access phase. So this would give us that there is a transaction ongoing. Now if we get ready in the transaction phase, we know that the slave accepted that particular transaction. Now we need to check if that particular transaction was a read or a write. So we check that by using the pwrite_q signal. If this was equal to 0, then it would mean that it is a read transaction. So if the slave is giving out a p-ready, it would be giving out some read data on this particular cycle as well. So that is why we captured that particular read data and store it in a signal called next read data, and then we flop that as well because we need to store that particular value. And that is why we have added flops for that. So that particular signal remains in read data_q. Now whenever we are giving out a write transaction, we need to make use of this flopped value and add 1 to it. So we are missing that particular logic. So this should be read data q plus 32 ticket 1. So which completes how our adder would be performed, and we will give out that same value on the write data signal. Once the slave sees that okay, this is a write transaction to this particular address, it will capture the write data, which would be the current value of your read data plus 1, and store it into the same flop. So next time again when we do our read, we will get the value of x plus 1 if the initial value was x. Once again we'll add 1 to it and then send it back, so it will become x plus 2, and that is how your adder will be working, or your incrementer would be working, right? Does that help? Any questions or anything which isn't clear? Okay, so let's look into the APB test bench really quickly. So this is your APB, and let's call it as APB slave TB. So we need all of these signals. Okay, all of these are declared as logic because SP will automatically convert it, and this needs to be a semicolon. Okay, so first thing which we'll do is we'll implement clock. So it will be always begin, end. Your P clock will be equal to 1 tick P0. We wait for 5 cycles. Then it will become 1 tick P1. We wait for 5 NS. And let's define clock as @POSH clock. Okay. Now let's instantiate the RTL. So we have APB add master. Let's call it APB master. Since all of these signals are same, we can directly do that. And let's drive stimulus. This would be initial, begin, end, $finish, and let's also have the VCD dump. $dump file, let's call it as APB master.vcd. Okay, so let's just compile this and then we'll add some stimulus to it. Okay, So everything is working fine. So now for stimulus, first thing we need to do is we need to assert reset. So it is an active low reset, which means it will be equal to 1 tick b0, and our input add underscore I should also be driven to all zeros. P ready should again be 1 tick b0, and P read data, it's fine, we can keep it as X. Then let's remain in reset for 2 cycles, and after that we come out of reset. And let's do not perform any operations for another 2 cycles. Okay, so let's check whether this is working or not. Be ready. Okay, so we have our clock, our reset signal, and that's it. We are not doing anything. Both our read data is all unknowns, and as well as write data is all unknown. Other than that, all the signals are at a known value, which is okay. So let's first initiate a read transaction. So how will we do that? By making sure that our add underscore I is equal to 2 tick b 0 1. So whenever the RTL sees that, it will initiate a read transaction, and let's after a clock cycle we need to make sure that this goes to 0, and let's wait for 4 cycles. Let's see what happens now. Okay, so as you can see, let me arrange these segments correctly. So let's have P cell, P enable, P address, P write, P write data, then we have P read data and P ready. Okay. So we are in reset on this cycle. We come out of reset. Your add I is all 0, so nothing is initiated. Your add I becomes 1 here. That is why on the next cycle you initiate your APB transaction. So you see that your transactions start with P cell being driven to 1, which means that you have entered the setup state here. And on the next cycle, your P enable becomes 1, which means that you are in the access phase. So you are in the access phase, and at that point your address is A followed by 3 zeros, which is what we wanted. P write is 0. Why 0? Because your add underscore I bit 1 was 0, which means that it is a read transaction, which is correct. Your write data is all unknown, which is fine. It can be unknown during a read transaction. Your read data is again unknown because this is an input to our RTL, which means the test bench needs to handle it. We haven't added that logic. And our P ready remains 0, which means that both we will continue to remain in the access state, which is what we see that on the next cycle your address is same as A000. Both P cell and P enable are 1, which means our RTL is working as expected. We continue to remain in the access state since we haven't seen any P ready. Cool. So which means that things are working as expected. Now let's add the stimulus. So first thing we'll do is what we'll implement APB slave here. So this implementation is straightforward. We just need to add a flop which works on the POSIX clock. So let's assume that whenever we got a P cell and a P enable, at that point what we can do is we will assert our P ready signal and our P read data. This would simply be what should this be? This would be whatever is being written. So now this would be some random value. Let's assume that this is a certain random value, and this needs to be okay, some random value between 0 to 29. I think this will not work. Okay. If we did not see P ready and P enable, then we can keep our P ready signal as low and P read data can again be some random value. Okay, and with so we will be driving a P read and P read data now, so the waveforms would look slightly better. Okay. Right, so I think this will complete. Okay, yeah. So yeah, we will fix this X issue here in a second. But let's see that we should get some value from our read data. So this is our clock. Okay, so our P read data, it started to become random, which is fine. Our P cell signal went high here, and then we got a P enable on the next cycle. Then we got our P ready on the next cycle, and at that point our data was 15, which means that the slave would have returned a value of 15, and then on the next cycle onwards we once we issue a write transaction, then this 15 should become 16. So we need to still add stimulus to do that, but yeah, we can see that we are getting some value and our P ready is also behaving correctly. It should have gone to 0 here, but we'll fix that. But first let's fix the X issue here. So this is because our flop here is using a synchronous reset. Let's make it asynchronous. And okay, so P ready, okay, this will work fine. Now we know that we have given our read transaction, so now we do a write transaction. So your add underscore I would now be 2B11. We'll wait for a clock, make it go to 0, and let's repeat it for 4 cycles. Okay. Right, so now at least the X issue is gone. Your P ready is 0 right out of reset. So we fixed that, and let us arrange these signals real quickly. P clock, P reset, add I, P cell, P enable, P address, P write, P write data, P read, and P ready. Okay. Now what happens is our add I became 1 here. On the next cycle we started the transaction. It was a read transaction. The value which we got was 15, and this is where the transaction got completed. It is fine. Our P ready can remain asserted here, or it can go to 0. There are no timing relationships so around P ready. Now what happens is here we got a value of 3, which means that we need to perform a write, and on the next cycle we assert our P cell signal. Then we also assert our P enable signal, and our P write becomes 1 here. So our P write became 1 here, and our P write data was still X. So this is not working correctly. We need to fix that. And so P read data and P ready are not of importance here. We get a P ready here, but we are giving out X's, which needs to be fixed. So there's something which is going wrong within the RTI. We need to see and fix that. But other than that, I think it is working correctly. So let's try to fix and debug what is going wrong. So what we know that our P write data is all X, which means something is not happening correctly. So we have a POSIX here. So now at least our I think this should fix it. So now our P write data, it is still X. Okay. P write data underscore O. Okay. So we are driving it using APB state access, which is which can either be 0 or 1, which means either our read data is not working correctly for some reason. So we have @POSIX clock or negedge P reset, and then we see if we are not in reset, this should go to 0. Otherwise, this should be equal to next. So let's take out read data and let's see what is happening here. Read data. Okay, so this indeed becomes 15, which means we are capturing this value, but somehow our P write data is not getting reflected. So which means that this read data underscore Q is correct. Yeah, so this is 15, which is correct. So this should have become 16 here, but it is not. Okay, so we are using the correct signal. Well, let's remove this for a second, and this was captured correctly. Is this correct? Okay, yeah, the signal name is not correct. Right. and now we see a value of 16 here. This is when your p enable becomes 1. Yeah, cool. So we got a value of 15 and we added 1 to it, and then we are returning it in this manner. So this way we are actually implementing an adder, which basically takes a value from your particular address, adds 1 to it, and then returns the same value. And if you write more stimulus, you can continue to increment it by 1 on every cycle. So with this, we actually complete the bootcamp session. And now if you have any questions or anything which isn't clear, please feel free to ask.